Let's go Broncos. Something big is happening behind the scenes in Denver right now. And I'm telling you, it could completely change how we see this defense in 2026. There's a silent movement underway, one that not everyone is talking about yet, but it has the potential to define careers, reshape roles, and maybe even decide who stays and who goes from the roster. But before I reveal all the details, don't forget to like this post if you truly believe this team is about to rise again. And I want to see the true optimists of the Broncos Nation leave a comment right now saying, "Go Broncos! 2026 is our comeback year." Because if you're still supporting this team amidst all this, you already know something special might be brewing here. Now let's get to what's really happening. Now let's get straight into what really matters. This change involving Drew Sanders isn't happening in isolation. In fact, it's directly tied to another key development. Jonah Ellis is expected to take on a much bigger role at inside linebacker than originally anticipated. In simple terms, yes, these two are essentially swapping responsibilities, though there are some nuances involved. So what does this mean on the field? Let's start with Sanders. Moving to outside linebacker in a 3-4 defensive scheme puts him in a hybrid role where he'll be responsible for both run defense and pass coverage. His job will often involve setting the edge, forcing running backs back inside toward traffic, and occasionally dropping into coverage against tight ends or running backs in the flat. This isn't new territory for him. He's already shown versatility throughout his college career, having experience at both inside and outside linebacker positions. But here's the real concern, and it's something fans cannot ignore: availability. Sanders has only appeared in 21 games across 3 seasons with the Broncos and started just 4 of them. Injuries have consistently slowed his development, including a significant foot tendon issue during training camp in 2025 that ultimately sidelined him for the entire season. That's a tough blow for a player with such high potential. And make no mistake, this upcoming season is a defining moment for him. Internally, this is being viewed as a make-or-break year. If he can't stay healthy or fails to make an impact, there's a real possibility the team could move on. The reality in the NFL is simple. The best ability is availability, and the Broncos are in no position to wait around. They're trying to build a roster capable of competing at the highest level, and that requires reliability. Now shifting over to Jonah Ellis, this is where things get really interesting. Moving him inside transforms his role entirely. Instead of focusing primarily on edge containment or pass rushing, he'll now be tasked with reading the entire field, managing defensive gaps, and acting as the communication hub of the defense. Inside linebackers are essentially the quarterbacks of the defense. They need to diagnose plays quickly and react even faster. What gives confidence in Ellis making this transition is his skill set and football IQ. He's already proven to be effective on special teams and has shown flashes as a pass rusher. More importantly, there's a blueprint for his success. His brother Caden Ellis, who has successfully played both inside and outside linebacker roles at a high level. That versatility is exactly what the Broncos are betting on here. And here's something fans need to understand. Moving inside doesn't mean Ellis loses his ability to pressure the quarterback. In fact, modern defensive schemes often rely on inside linebackers to generate pressure through blitz packages. So don't be surprised if he still finds ways to impact the backfield. All of this leads to a bigger question looming over the franchise. How does this affect the Broncos' draft strategy? At first glance, you might think this positional reshuffling reduces the urgency to draft a linebacker early, but that's not necessarily the case. There's still a strong expectation that the team will target the position likely on day 3 of the draft. Names like Kyle Lewis, Bryce Shear, and Red Murdoch are already being discussed internally as potential fits. Players who bring speed, versatility, and strong instincts, qualities that align perfectly with what this defense is trying to build. So here's where things stand right now. Drew Sanders is getting another shot, but under pressure to prove he belongs. Jonah Ellis is stepping into a more demanding, cerebral role that could elevate his impact significantly. And the Broncos are still actively looking to add more talent to this linebacker group through the draft. This isn't just a positional tweak, it's a strategic shift that could define the identity of this defense in 2026. And this is exactly where things start to get even more intriguing for the Denver Broncos moving forward. Because this shift isn't just about filling roles, it's about building a defensive identity that can finally take this team to another level. When you look at how everything is being structured, it's clear the coaching staff is prioritizing versatility, speed, and intelligence over traditional positional labels. Drew Sanders going back to outside linebacker gives the defense more flexibility on the edge, especially in situations where they need someone who can both contain the run and drop into coverage without tipping off the offense. But the real key here is how limited his margin for error has become. This isn't a developmental phase anymore. This is evaluation under pressure. The team has already invested time in him, and now they need returns. If he stays healthy and performs, he can absolutely carve out a rotational role, and maybe even more. But if injuries continue to follow him, the Broncos won't hesitate to make a tough decision. At the same time, Jonah Ellis stepping into that inside linebacker role could quietly become one of the most important adjustments of the entire offseason. We're talking about a player who already brings energy, physicality, and pass rush upside, now being asked to command the middle of the defense. That requires a completely different mindset reading offenses, adjusting alignments, and being the connective piece between the defensive line and the secondary. And based on everything we're hearing, the coaching staff believes he's ready for that responsibility. What stands out the most is how this aligns with the overall philosophy of the defense. Speed is clearly a non-negotiable trait. The Broncos want players who can close gaps quickly, react instantly, and cover ground sideline to sideline. That's why even when discussing draft prospects, the focus isn't just on size, it's on range, instincts, and adaptability. And speaking of the draft, don't be fooled into thinking the Broncos are done addressing the linebacker position. The expectation is still that they'll bring in additional talent, especially on day 3. This is about competition and depth. Even if Sanders and Ellis step into their roles effectively, the team knows that injuries happen, and having multiple capable linebackers is essential for a deep playoff run. Kyle Lewis, for example, continues to gain traction as a potential fit. Not because he's the biggest linebacker, but because he embodies the traits this defense values. His speed, his ability to track the ball, and his instincts in coverage make him exactly the type of player who could thrive in this system. And when you hear that he's a film junkie and a team leader, it only reinforces why he's on the radar. So when you put it all together, this linebacker room is being reshaped in real time. You've got a high upside player like Sanders fighting to prove he can stay on the field. A rising piece like Ellis being trusted with more responsibility, and the likelihood of new talent being added through the draft to push everyone even further. This is competition at its core, and it's exactly what this team needs if they want to elevate their defensive unit. Because, let's be honest, if the Broncos are going to make a serious push and position themselves as contenders again, it's going to come down to how well this defense performs. And moves like this show that they're not standing still. They're actively searching for the right combination of players to make it happen. Now, as we wrap this up, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and keep an eye on the next video on your screen, because we're going to continue breaking down everything happening with this team as we get closer to the season. And this is where everything connects in a way that should have every Broncos fan paying very close attention. Because what we're seeing right now is not just a short-term adjustment. It's a long-term evaluation of who truly fits the future of this franchise. The coaching staff is clearly sending a message. Roles are earned, not given. Drew Sanders has the talent. There's no doubt about that. The flashes have always been there. The versatility, the athleticism, the ability to impact both the run and the pass, it's all part of his game. But none of that matters if he's not consistently on the field. And that's why this season carries so much weight for him. This isn't just about proving he can play outside linebacker again, it's about proving he can be relied upon week after week. At the same time, Jonah Ellis is stepping into a role that could redefine his career trajectory. Moving inside linebacker isn't just a positional shift, it's a leadership test.